The bus screeched to a halt, not for traffic, not for a red light, but for the impossible. There, on the cracked sidewalk beneath a flickering street lamp, sat a tiny lion cub. Alone. Shivering. And wrapped in something that made every passenger's heart drop the moment they saw it. No one moved at first. Not the driver. Not the early morning commuters. Not even the stray dog who had been rummaging through a tipped-over trash can. The world froze for a second as dozens of eyes locked onto the frail golden body lying beside the rusted metal bench. The cub blinked sluggishly. His ribs pressed visibly against his thin, dirty coat. His tiny chest heaved with effort. But what truly shattered the silence, what brought someone on the bus to scream, wasn't the cub's size. It was what had been tangled in his matted fur. Something moved. Before the bus. Just an hour earlier, that same stretch of road had been utterly quiet. Only the wind made noise, kicking up dust and discarded wrappers. But hidden behind a row of overgrown hedges near the old hardware store was a box. Wet, broken, and chewed at the edges. Inside, pressed into the corner like he was trying to disappear, was a lion cub. No more than a few weeks old. He had been left there sometime in the dead of night, likely dumped by someone who knew full well that no zoo, no sanctuary, and certainly no neighbor was going to take in a lion cub, illegal, starving, and visibly traumatized. The cub had a deep wound on his front leg, half-healed but dirty. His eyes were crusted. His stomach was bloated not with food but with hunger. And the worst part? The movement in his fur, unmistakable now, wasn't just fleas. It was something much worse. The moment of discovery. Back at the bus stop, an older woman, Elaine, a retired nurse with a spine of steel and a heart of gold, was the first to react. While others stood in shocked silence or took out their phones to record, Elaine stormed down the steps of the bus. "Don't just look at him," she snapped. "He's a baby." She knelt carefully, speaking softly to the cub as she reached out a trembling hand. His little ears flicked at her voice. He didn't growl. Didn't run. He didn't have the strength. He just watched her with exhausted, golden eyes that didn't seem like they belonged to a predator at all. Elaine gently touched his head, and that's when she felt it. The rough, gritty texture in his fur. She pulled her hand back with a gasp. Blood. Dried, crusted blood. And crawling beneath it, maggots. The crowd recoiled. One man actually gagged. Someone dropped their coffee. But Elaine didn't flinch. Not for long. She reached into her purse and pulled out tissues, water, even a pair of gloves. Always prepared, the nurse in her still alive. She spoke to the bus driver over her shoulder, voice firm. "Call animal rescue. No. This baby won't make it another hour." A race against time. The bus driver, Samir, didn't argue. He was already dialing by the time Elaine was trying to hydrate the cub's cracked lips with her water bottle. But no one was picking up. It was barely 6 a.m., and local animal control services were notoriously slow. Passengers started getting off the bus, some to offer help, others out of curiosity. A young woman named Marnie Googled nearby rescue groups and found a local wildlife rehab facility, Second Chance Wild. She tried their emergency line and got through to a groggy but instantly alert voice. "A lion cub?" "Yes," Marnie said. "He's in horrible shape. He's got wounds and there are maggots in his fur. We're on the way." 20 minutes. A cub with no name and a story that felt unreal. Elaine continued to comfort the cub, who now had his head resting on her knee. His breathing was shallow. His eyes were barely open. She kept petting him, whispering softly as if trying to coax the life back into his tiny frame. "No mother? No siblings?" she murmured. "What happened to you, sweetheart?" That question would haunt everyone who saw him that morning. What kind of person could abandon a lion cub like this? Where had he come from? A traveling exotic pet trader? A failed backyard zoo? Had his mother been killed? Had he been born into captivity and discarded like garbage the moment he got sick? When the wildlife rescue van finally arrived, two professionals, Jonas and Tilly, jumped out with blankets, gloves, and emergency kits. "Oh my God," Tilly breathed when she saw him. "He's just a baby. He's dehydrated, wounded, possibly septic," Elaine said quickly, already listing the symptoms. "There's maggot infestation. He needs fluids, antibiotics, and a clean place to rest." Jonas carefully lifted the cub with thick gloves, the little body so light it felt like lifting a pillow. The cub didn't resist. Didn't move. Tilly placed a soft towel over him in the carrier and they were gone within minutes, sirens blaring. Left behind but not forgotten. The crowd slowly dispersed. The bus continued its route. But the story was far from over. Elaine didn't get back on the bus. Instead, she asked Marnie for the name of the rescue group and called them herself. "I want to know if he makes it," she said. "I want updates. And if you need help with supplies, medical or otherwise, I'll donate. He's not going to be forgotten. Not this one." And she meant it. But even she wasn't prepared for what the rescue team would discover later that day, when the cub, against the odds, opened his eyes again, and what the vets found lodged in his fur sent shockwaves through the entire rescue community. The rescue van's sirens faded into the early morning hum of a waking city, but inside the vehicle, urgency ruled every second. The lion cub lay limp in the crate, the only sign of life being the shallow rise and fall of his tiny ribcage under the towel Tilly had wrapped around him. Jonas drove with both hands clenched on the wheel, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every other second. Tilly sat in the back beside the carrier, her phone on speaker as she talked to the head vet at Second Chance Wild. "He's young. Maybe 5 weeks, tops," she said, her voice clipped but steady. "Weight's critically low. One visible leg wound, maggot infestation, signs of dehydration and possible shock. His gums are pale. Very little responsiveness. Start fluids the moment you get here," came the voice on the other end. "And isolate him from the other animals. No idea what diseases he might be carrying." "Understood." Tilly ended the call and gently reached into the crate with gloved fingers to check his breathing again. She felt the faintest gust of air against her hand. "You're a fighter?" she whispered. "Just hold on." At the sanctuary. Second Chance Wild wasn't a massive operation. Just 5 acres of repurposed farmland turned into a safe haven for injured wildlife and illegal exotics that had nowhere else to go. The staff was small but fierce, and their ICU room was already prepped by the time the van rolled in. Dr. Olivia Trask, the lead vet and co-founder of the sanctuary, met them at the entrance. Her lab coat was already splattered from an emergency op on a hawk earlier that morning, but the moment she saw the crate being carried in, her focus shifted entirely. "Bring him straight to Bay 2. The team moved fast. 4 fluids. Antibiotic injections. Maggot removal. Sedation. Warm pads. Every step was performed with quiet coordination honed by hundreds of rescues. But this one felt different. This one felt wrong. "Let's clear the fur and see how bad the infestation is," Olivia said. She gently began trimming away the matted, blood-soaked fur around the wound on the cub's front leg. Tilly held the cub steady while Jonas prepared saline and antiseptic. The maggots were embedded deeper than they'd thought. "Oh no," Olivia murmured. "He's not just wounded. Someone cut him." "What?" Jonas looked up, stunned. "You mean like an accident?" "No. Surgical. Crude but deliberate." Olivia continued cleaning, her jaw tightening as more of the wound was revealed. Then she stopped completely. "There's something in here," she said. She reached for forceps, probing gently. And then, something small and metallic emerged from the cut. "What the hell?" Tilly breathed. It was a microchip. But not a standard tracking chip, not the kind they used in rescues or by zoos. This one was black market tech. Homemade. Unregistered. Olivia turned it over with a gloved hand, disgust etched into every line of her face. "This isn't for ID. This is a tracker. Someone wanted to monitor him remotely." Jonas stepped closer. "So someone knew where he was? Or wanted to know," Olivia said. "But he was dumped. Why would they leave a chip in? Unless they didn't mean to lose him." The room fell silent, the implications settling heavy in the air. The backstory begins to unfold. They scan the chip with a custom reader. No registered info. No data packet. Just a signal frequency now inert. A ghost of intent. "Whoever did this had access to exotic tech," Olivia said. "And absolutely no care for the animal's well-being." Back in the break room, Tilly and Jonas began digging through recent reports of illegal animal trafficking. They started with the obvious. Recent seizures at airports, border rescues, private zoo shutdowns. It didn't take long before a familiar name popped up. Drake Vanzetti? An infamous underground exotic animal breeder, Vanzetti had been raided twice in the past year. Both times, authorities found large cats, bears and wolves in horrifying conditions, caged, sedated, underfed. But they never found everything. There had always been whispers that his main operation was mobile. Temporary locations. Hidden trucks. Moving auctions. And 2 weeks ago there had been a report, barely covered by local news, of a stolen transport van believed to belong to Vanzetti's ring. No arrests. No animals recovered. Until now. Could he have fallen out during transport? Jonas asked. Or maybe someone stole him and dumped him when they realized he was sick? It wouldn't be the first time someone tried to play hero and gave up when it got hard, Tilly muttered. An unlikely survivor. Against all odds, the cub made it through his first night. He was given a temporary name, Shiloh, meaning peace, a soft name for a soft soul who had seen nothing but cruelty. Over the next 24 hours, his condition stabilized enough to begin cleaning and treating his body more thoroughly. They bathed him gently, removing layers of filth and dried blood, revealing a coat that shimmered faintly under the grime, pale gold with faint black speckles. Rare markings. Unusual even for lions. Is it possible he's not pure lion? Olivia asked aloud. Maybe hybrid? Tilly said. Liger cubs sometimes have spots like this early on. But ligers are massive and he's tiny, Jonas pointed out. If anything, he looks like a pure lion cub who just never had a chance to grow. DNA testing was scheduled. But for now, what mattered most was getting food into him. They began with formula, kitten milk replacer mixed with goat's milk, fed through a syringe. Shiloh was weak, but his instincts were there. He suckled slowly, eyes barely open, tail twitching faintly as if remembering what it meant to feel safe. It was a moment that made Olivia step out of the room. When she returned, her eyes were red. We can't let this one fall through the cracks. Public outcry begins. Marnie, the young woman from the bus, had posted photos and video snippets of the rescue. She'd captured Elaine kneeling beside the cub, the moment the van arrived, and even footage of Shiloh being lifted with trembling hands into a blanket. Within hours, the post had gone viral. Lion cub found at city bus stop, help identify this baby's past. Hashtag Shiloh the cub began trending. The sanctuary's phones blew up. Donations poured in. Offers of help came from every direction. Vets, volunteers, wildlife experts, and people who simply couldn't shake the image of that tiny, broken cub on the cold pavement. Elaine showed up at the gates with supplies and a quiet resolve. She didn't want thanks. She wanted him to live. When she finally saw him through the ICU window, curled in his little bed, a heat lamp warming his fragile body, she whispered, "You're stronger than the ones who hurt you." And maybe, just maybe, she was right. The next shocking discovery. 3 days into recovery, Shiloh had his first true examination while fully sedated. Olivia had waited until he was strong enough to handle it. X-rays, blood panels, stool tests, full-body scans. She didn't expect what she found in his abdomen. Tiny fragments of plastic. Worn, partially digested. Olivia stared at the screen in horror. He's been eating garbage. Probably for days. The cub had survived on what little he could find before collapsing at the bus stop. Wrappers. Twine. Even traces of rubber. This means he wasn't dumped just last night, Tilly realized. He's been out in the city. Alone. Scavenging. And no one saw him? Jonas said, incredulous. They did, Olivia muttered. But no one looked. But one question remained. Who put the tracker in his body? The chip wasn't implanted under the skin like normal, it was buried in the open wound. That made no sense unless it had been added after he was injured, or unless it was the injury. Someone had sliced into Shiloh to place the chip. Not to monitor his health, but to test something. Experimental tracking, Olivia said. Live testing on a dying cub. We weren't supposed to find him. He was supposed to die out there. The room fell into silence again. But this time it was followed by a quiet, burning determination. Not this time. Shiloh slept peacefully for the first time in his life. Tucked beneath a soft fleece blanket in the ICU wing of Second Chance Wild, a gentle heat lamp beamed over his fragile frame. His once crusted eyes were clear now, and his wounds were cleaned and stitched. The hum of machines and the soft murmur of staff filled the space, but to Shiloh, it was a lullaby. After days, possibly weeks, of pain, fear, and loneliness, his tiny battered body was finally safe. But outside his room, war was brewing. Dr. Olivia Trask stood in front of the whiteboard in the break room, a steaming mug in one hand and photos in the other. On the board, a printed map, marked with colored pins tracing sightings, drop-offs, and confiscations tied to one name, Drake Vanzetti. Tilly entered, arms full of files. More reports. 2 lion cubs found in a warehouse in Milwaukee last month. Malnourished. No IDs. No chips. Same age as Shiloh. Any photos? Olivia asked, flipping through the folder. Only one survived. Female. The other died before rescue. The surviving cub bore a striking resemblance to Shiloh. Same pale fur, same faint speckles. Olivia tapped her finger on the image. Same bloodline, she muttered. I'd bet my license on it. Think he had siblings? Olivia's jaw clenched. I think he watched them die. Digging deeper. Jonas had spent the last 24 hours off-site, following up on a lead passed anonymously to the sanctuary's inbox. A burner email account with no name and a single sentence. You're not the only one who found one. Check the train yard near Dock 12. It was vague. Risky. But something about it felt real. And the moment Jonas got there, he knew it wasn't a prank. Behind the chain-link fencing and rows of rusting cargo containers, nestled beneath a pile of crumpled tarps, he found blood. Not fresh but recent enough to raise alarm. And fur, short, golden strands tangled in the fabric. Lion fur. He snapped photos and brought a scrap back to the sanctuary. Olivia compared the DNA with Shiloh's. Same mitochondrial markers, she confirmed. It was his sibling. A litter mate. But no body was found. Alive or dead, the sibling was gone. A name from the darkness. As the team raced to find answers, Elaine, still following Shiloh's story like a hawk, stepped into action. She had connections in the medical field and an old friend from her nursing days who now worked in a private security firm. She asked for a favor. 3 hours later she had a name, Nico Ramirez. A former vet tech turned whistleblower, Nico had worked as a contractor for various private exotic pet operations across state lines. He'd vanished from the grid 6 months ago after a close call with Vanzetti's crew. But he had surfaced briefly in a wildlife forum 2 weeks ago, under the username LionX93, posting anonymously about sick cubs being used for testing, and a failed transport that left one behind. The post had been removed within hours. Elaine shared the name and details with Olivia and the team. Tilly immediately got to work tracking him down. The call. Late one night, the sanctuary's landline rang. Olivia picked it up, half expecting another reporter. Instead, a raspy voice came through. I saw the cub on the news, it said. The one from the bus stop. Nico. Silence. I don't know who you are, he said cautiously. But if you're the vet, don't let anyone take that cub. If they find out he survived, they'll come for him. Olivia's spine straightened. We're not giving him up. But we need answers. Nico hesitated. There were 7 cubs. All from the same litter. Taken from a private breeder near El Paso. The mother was killed, no paperwork, no license. They were all chipped. Vanzetti was testing black market tracking systems for exotic pet buyers. Chips that wouldn't register on vet scanners. And the wounds? Intentional. Part of the trial. He wanted to see how the animals behaved after trauma. How long they'd survive unsupervised. He called it a stress test. Olivia felt sick. Shiloh was meant to die. All of them were, Nico said. But one got loose during transport. I think that's your cub. Why are you helping us? More silence. Then. Because I helped him get out. Piecing it together. With Nico's intel, the pieces started falling into place. Shiloh had been transported in a van that was rerouted through the city, possibly during a raid scare. In the chaos, Nico had left the rear door unlocked during a refueling stop. One crate had tipped. One baby had crawled out. Shiloh. He had wandered through alleyways and behind dumpsters, scavenging to survive. Until finally he collapsed at that bus stop, where fate or mercy or something greater placed Elaine in his path. This is bigger than a single rescue, Jonas said the next morning, staring at the updated board. This is an entire trafficking network. And they're still out there. Then we need to expose them, Olivia said. And we start by telling Shiloh's story. Going public. Second Chance Wild launched a campaign called #JusticeForShiloh. They posted the full timeline, his discovery, the tracker, the abuse, and the connection to Vanzetti. Photos of Shiloh, wrapped in blankets, sleeping peacefully, slowly learning to walk again, flooded social media. They didn't hide the graphic truth. People needed to see what these animals endured. Within 48 hours, donations tripled. Wildlife advocates across the country offered support. Law firms specializing in animal cruelty cases reached out. Even retired federal agents contacted the sanctuary with old case files on Vanzetti. But most importantly, they reached someone else. The whistleblower returns. Nico called again. They're moving locations. End of the week. You want evidence? I can get you the crate Shiloh came in. The logs. The chip models. But I need protection. Olivia didn't hesitate. We'll get you safe. You get us the truth. Plans were set in motion. Elaine reached out to her security contacts. A hidden camera was placed at a designated drop-off spot. And 2 nights later, in the dead of night, someone left a sealed metal box at the gate of Second Chance Wild. Inside, A custom tracker chip identical to the one removed from Shiloh. A binder with timestamps, shipment logs, and a list of cubs, Shiloh's littermates. And one bloodied crate tag that read, Test batch C7///venue, Mexico City / status, and unviable. Olivia stared at the word non-viable. They labeled him a failed product. She looked over her shoulder at the cub, now able to stand on shaky legs, his soft tail flicking as he blinked up at her with quiet trust. He's not a product. He's a survivor. A choice to make. That afternoon, the sanctuary received a letter. Legal. Cold. From an anonymous firm claiming to represent a rightful exotic animal owner. They demanded custody of Shiloh. Olivia shredded it without blinking. They weren't going to win. Not this time. But with new eyes on their sanctuary, the team had a choice to make. Keep Shiloh's story local, or take it national, even global. Risk the spotlight or light the fire that could burn the trafficking operation to the ground. The decision was unanimous. They would take this story everywhere. News networks, podcasts, wildlife summits. Testify in front of lawmakers if needed. Shiloh would become the face of something far bigger than his pain. He would become the face of hope. The letter was only the beginning. Within 3 days, Second Chance Wild was hit with a cease and desist order. Then came the lawsuit, thinly veiled under the name of a private exotic animal breeder, but everyone at the sanctuary knew exactly who was behind it. Drake Vanzetti. The man who'd trafficked rare animals across borders. Who'd mutilated lion cubs and turned babies like Shiloh into experiments. Who labeled a living creature as non-viable. But Vanzetti had made one mistake. He'd let one of them go. And the world had seen. A mountain of evidence. Thanks to Nico's documents, the sanctuary now had undeniable proof tying Vanzetti to the illegal shipment of 7 lion cubs, including Shiloh. The smuggling logs, black market tracker schematics, and testing protocols were authenticated by multiple former employees. The most damning of all? A signed shipment manifest bearing Vanzetti's initials next to the words. Stress protocol approved, track, abandon, observe. Olivia handed the file to the Wildlife Crimes Unit with hands that trembled, not from fear but from fury. 2 weeks later, federal agents raided Vanzetti's Arizona estate. The footage made international news. Cages hidden beneath fake barns, half-built enclosures with bones scattered in the dirt, and, most tragically, half a dozen sedated lion cubs waiting in crates, marked 4 test shipment D4. They were alive but barely. And Shiloh? He watched the entire broadcast from a soft bed in the sanctuary's recovery room. His fur had begun to grow back, fuller now, stronger. His limp was improving. And his eyes, once cloudy with pain, shone bright amber with alertness. He'd lived. He remembered. The courtroom. 4 months later, Olivia stood in a packed courtroom in San Antonio, Texas, the lion cub sleeping in her arms. He was heavier now. Still small, still healing but healthy. The entire gallery was silent. Reporters lined the back, and even the judge paused as Olivia walked toward the witness stand with Shiloh nestled against her chest. "This is Shiloh," she said softly. He was found alone at a bus stop. Wounded, starving, and with a black market chip sewn into his leg. She turned, showing the jury the faint pink scar still visible on his limb. Someone tried to use him like a broken device. They didn't see him as a creature. They saw him as data. The court watched in stunned silence as Shiloh stirred, lifted his head, and looked directly at the defendant's table. Drake Vanzetti refused to meet his gaze. A roar for justice. Tilly and Jonas both testified. So did Elaine, the woman who'd stopped her day to kneel beside a dying cub at a bus stop. She wore the same scarf she'd had on that day, and her voice only trembled once when she said, "I didn't know what he was. I just knew he needed help. And I knew I couldn't be the kind of person who walked away." But it was Nico's testimony that drove the final nail into the coffin. Appearing under federal protection, Nico revealed the entire operation. The breeding, the fake permits, the transport routes, the protocols. He admitted to working under threat, smuggling exotic animals under false names and delivering them to clients, who paid for exclusivity, not legality. Vanzetti didn't just break the law, Nico told the court. He erased the line between life and inventory. And Shiloh? He wasn't supposed to survive. That's why I helped him get out. The trial lasted 8 days. The jury took 2 hours to deliberate. The verdict? Guilty. On all 23 counts. The aftermath. The ruling sparked a chain reaction. 3 other breeding operations were shut down. Wildlife law reform bills were introduced in 2 states. And the sanctuary? It became a symbol of resistance. People across the world began tagging photos of rescued animals with hashtag Justice for Shiloh. Donations poured in. Volunteers came from as far as Japan and Germany. Schools began using Shiloh's story in ethics and conservation classes. But all the fame, all the headlines, none of it mattered to Shiloh. What mattered was that for the first time in his life he had a home. The big decision. A month after the verdict, Olivia sat with her team around the fire pit just outside the main facility. Shiloh, now growing rapidly, nuzzled into a patch of tall grass nearby, flicking his tail and watching crickets. "He's getting big," Jonas said. "He's going to outgrow the recovery enclosure in a few weeks." "Yeah," Tilly added. "And that roar? It's no longer a squeak. He means it now." Olivia nodded. "Which means we need to make a choice." Sanctuary life was safe, but limited. Shiloh needed space. Freedom. A chance to run like the lion he was born to be. The vet team had been in contact with a protected reserve in South Africa. 50,000 acres of secured land, home to other rescued big cats. A place where he wouldn't be confined, but also wouldn't be hunted. But it meant letting him go. The farewell. The flight arrangements took weeks. Paperwork, permits, safety checks. When the day finally arrived, the entire team gathered to say goodbye. Elaine arrived early, standing by the crate with tears in her eyes and a hand resting against the bars. "Look at you," she whispered. "From a bus stop to a kingdom." Shiloh nudged her hand gently with his nose. Tilly held back tears as she loaded the crate into the sanctuary's transport van. Jonas placed a stuffed lion plush, one Shiloh had played with during his recovery, next to the bed of straw. "Just a reminder," he said softly, "that you were loved." Olivia gave him one last health check, then whispered into his ear, "Roar loud enough for the world to hear you." And with that he was gone. A new life. The sanctuary received video updates weekly. At first, Shiloh stayed close to the fence line, unsure of the open space. But slowly instinct returned. He learned to stalk, chase, leap. His muscles filled in. His fur thickened. His roar deepened. In one video, he stood on a rocky hill as the sun rose behind him, mane beginning to form, eyes full of life. He turned to the camera and let out a sound that echoed across the savannah. Not a cry. Not a plea. A roar. Back at Second Chance Wild, a small statue stands near the front gate now. Bronze. Weather-worn. A lion cub curled up in the arms of a woman. The plaque reads, "To the ones who were discarded. You are not forgotten." Every child who visits the sanctuary hears Shiloh's story. Every rescue that comes through the doors is given the same vow. You are not a number. You are not a case. You are not non-viable. You are worthy. You are seen. You are home. From a bus stop to the wild. From nearly forgotten to never again. Shiloh's roar continues to echo, not just across the grasslands of his new home, but in the hearts of every person who saw him, saved him, and now fights for those who can't fight for themselves. Love stories like this? Want to help us rescue more animals like Shiloh? Subscribe to Lion's Shield for more heart-pounding survival tales and real-life animal rescue missions that prove hope is never lost, even at a bus stop. Join the pride. Roar with us.